would like now, as we move forward, to sort of unveiling our, looking at who our 2019 honoree is. Oh, you know what? Let's take a quick look before I introduce her daughter, Becky. Let's take a quick look at her career. When she was sworn in, speaking, let's take a look at her family.
Oh my gosh.
She might not have seen these photos. Surprise. We talked about that yesterday. Is it good or bad to surprise the Attorney General of your state? We'll find out.
Oh no.
She says that was at Habitat for Humanity, so that's in the wrong category. That should be in the giving back category. Some of her adventures.
Oh no.
She doesn't just climb mountains career-wise. Look at that.
Oh no.
What were you climbing there?
It was a glacier.
Oh, was that all? Just a glacier?
Oh, Becky.
Her activities and giving back. With Congressman Lisa Blunt Rochester as well, in the center in pink. Also, by the way, a University and West Club member, just saying. And now I'd like to introduce Kathleen Jennings' daughter, Becky.
Hi. Today, I would like to talk about the strongest woman I know. A woman who has fought so hard to get to where she is today. A woman who has fought through life obstacles and gender boundaries to reach a place she has always dreamt of being. A woman who has so much passion and devotion for everything that she does, and who cares so much about the community she has been a part of her entire life. This woman is my mother. I remember growing up and seeing my mother work so hard, the long hours, the stress, and all the obstacles that she faced. As a kid, I don't think you fully understand it, but as an adult, I am truly inspired by it. It takes strength to push forward in a career that at the time my mother entered it was a predominantly male field. But if anyone knows my mother, then they know that this would not stop her from reaching every goal and every success that she ever wanted. Not only was my mother making a name for herself, trying the only serial killer case in Delaware, becoming chief deputy, partnering in her own law firm, and then becoming state prosecutor and of course now attorney general, which in itself are all huge accomplishments, but all the while also being a single mother to 2 children. She raised us on her own, during the day working, managing to have dinner as a family every night, helping us with our homework, getting us to bed, just to then continue working for hours. My mother was present in all aspects of her life. She was present in her career, and she was always present for her children. When many people would say there just wasn't enough time, she always made the time. My mother was Superwoman. She proved that you could have both. You could be a mother and raise a family, as well as have the most successful of careers. Being raised by a successful single mother taught me so much as a woman myself. It taught me that I could reach the highest peak, that I could be anyone that I wanted to be, and that I could truly have it all. I was lucky to be raised by such a strong person, who truly cares about the work that she does and the people she does it for. I was lucky to be raised by someone who taught me never to limit myself, to reach as high as I wanted, to never give up, and to believe that I could have it all. And now today, I am honored to be up here introducing the woman who gave me everything, who has always been my biggest support, who is my best friend, who inspired me and truly is my hero. Thank you.
I don't know how you top that. I'm crying. Our next guest speaker is Commissioner Mary McDonough.
What you just heard from that loving daughter is the most important thing you're going to hear today about Kathy Jennings. Because the love you heard reflects the love that Kathy has held in her heart for both Becky and Billy from the very beginning. Her children are the center of Kathy's life. It is by far the most valuable takeaway about today's honoree, hands down. But let me tell you a little bit about what she's done out in the world, along with being such a good mom to Becky and Billy. And by the way, most of what I will tell you is going to be ancient history. Oh, I'm unlike Becky, I didn't know where to stand. I think the music got me off. I'm a dinosaur. And the dinosaur is going to tell you some ancient history because you all read in the paper about what Kathy's doing now in her brief 2 months in office so far. And I'm going to tell you something about the past 40 years, which is how long I've known Kathy. We've been friends for over 40 years. And before I knew her, and I need my glasses, Kathy was a kid growing up in the city of Wilmington, just a few blocks from here. In fact, her grandfather laid the tiles in the floor of Sacred Heart Church. And while Kathy grew up and went to grade school in the city, she did go to high school at Mount Pleasant, and it's so nice that students from her alma mater are here to celebrate with her. And by the way, Ursuline is my alma mater. But back to Kathy. Kathy grew up as a city girl who became a pioneer woman. And while her style is hardly Little House on the Prairie, this is a woman of rugged determination and grit, along with a really big heart, nurtured by the love of her single mom and later stepdad, along with a devoted, loving family. As a pioneer, Kathy has had a long list of first and a few seconds in her legal career. She was only the second woman prosecutor in the Attorney General's office in our state. She was the first woman in various criminal division units, including the rape unit, and later became the first woman to serve as state prosecutor and, as Becky mentioned, Chief Deputy Attorney General, the #2 position in that office. Kathy has now been elected, of course, as our Attorney General, the second woman to hold that post in Delaware. And while this list of trailblazing roles is impressive and definitely reflects Kathy's talent and hard work, what is even more impressive to me and more valuable is that Kathy's motivation was never about the firsts in her own career, not about resume building. Rather, she has been driven to make a difference for the good. Her law degree was the means for this city girl to engage in real public service. And has she ever done that, despite some obstacles along the way, as Becky referred to, based on her gender? Let me share a story with you about Kathy from her first full year as a prosecutor. The year was 1979, and the place, believe it or not, was the United States Supreme Court. Kathy had researched and written most of the appellate brief in a case that had been accepted by that court. So she was invited to sit at counsel table for the oral argument. This was a big deal. So a number of us took off from work and we went on a field trip to D.C. with Kathy. However, once we got there, and Kathy started to enter the area beyond the bar, the gated area, to sit at counsel table, the bailiff, with a stern and patronizing tone of voice, admonished her that, "Oh, ma'am, only attorneys can enter that area." Kathy responded that she was an attorney and was co-counsel in the case next up for oral argument. Without changing expression, the bailiff told her, "Ma'am, only attorneys can sit at counsel table." It was as if Kathy were speaking a different language. He simply could not process the fact that a woman could be an attorney. We, her friends, were shocked, but Kathy kept her calm. She took a deep breath, reached in her wallet for her Delaware bar ID card, and with quiet dignity showed it to the bailiff. He was mortified, of course, apologized profusely as he escorted her to counsel table. The takeaway? Kathy Jennings keeps her wits about her. She was not going to be distracted, even by such blatant sexism that played out at the United States Supreme Court. She kept her focus on why she was there, for an oral argument before the highest court in the land. Back here in Delaware, Kathy's also run into some obstacles during the course of her legal career, maybe not as blatant as the Supreme Court one, but real nonetheless. She has, however, astutely figured out when to pick her fights over differential treatment and how to most effectively respond to it with strength and dignity. There's not enough time for the many stories about Kathy, even these ancient history ones, but let me share one more that shows how she leads with both her head and her heart. As Becky mentioned, Kathy prosecuted the serial murder case against Stephen Pinnell, who was charged with killing many prostituted women in the late 1980s. It was a legally challenging and cutting-edge case. It was the first time that DNA evidence had been admitted at trial in Delaware, and only the third or fourth time in the entire country. Kathy relied on her smarts, her hard work ethic, and discipline to effectively litigate this case. Along with the cerebral side, however, of the case, Kathy cared deeply about the murder victims, whose lives had not been valued much by society, even when they were alive. During the course of the investigation and trial, Kathy worked closely with the victims' friends, many of whom were still in the so-called life. On Thanksgiving Day in 1989, the jury came back with a guilty verdict. Not long after that, a bouquet of beautiful flowers arrived at Kathy's office. The card accompanying the flowers read, and I quote, "From the women of Route 13 and 40, you made us feel like human beings," close quote. I remember Kathy's reaction to that bouquet of flowers. I think it was one of her favorite bouquets of flowers in her entire life, except for those from her family, Becky, but wow, was she touched by that. But it was not just she who was impacted. The women who thanked Kathy for fighting so hard for justice for their late friends knew that Kathy hadn't just treated them with respect. She genuinely respected them and their murdered friends. Like all of us, the intuition of these women could tell the difference. And another point, Kathy, as usual, was way ahead of her time. She realized then that many, if not most, prostituted and domestically trafficked people have been victims of childhood sexual abuse that was never addressed. This is an understanding that is only gaining traction today. Kathy got it 30 years ago. And despite Kathy's positions of authority along the way and of power, her head has not been turned. She is still the city girl who was raised by salt of the earth, really good people, who instilled the values of equality, compassion, and respect in Kathy from an early age. Kathy, I bet that your late mom, your dear grandparents, your aunt and uncle are watching you today from the good seats with such pride, along with all of the rest of us, your family members and your friends. This pioneer woman has made a big difference over the course of her 40-year career in Delaware, and have no doubt she will continue to do so. Kathy worked so hard to make things better in the criminal justice system and in the overall administration of justice. Kathy, we thank you so much for the long-term commitment you have made to public service in our state of Delaware. Thank you.
Our final guest speaker of the day, Thomas McGonigal, who's a partner with Drinker Biddle Reith LLP.
I always wanted walk-up music. That's never happened to me before. That's pretty cool. So, good afternoon. I've known Kathy for a long time. We were colleagues in the AG's office. We were colleagues in a private law firm. We both had held public sector jobs where we worked together, and she's been a friend for a long time. I do think it's unfair that I had to follow Mary and Becky here, by the way. I'm just saying, but I'm going to do my best. About 14 or 15 months ago, Kathy and I had a coffee at my office, and she told me she was thinking about running for Attorney General, and she was 90% sure she wanted to do it. And I remember telling her, you need to be 100% sure. And we talked about it. And, you know, campaigns are so difficult, and I don't think people fully appreciate it. It just turns your life upside down. You have to call your friends for money. You have to call your friends to call their friends for money. It's like a giant Ponzi scheme. It's just horrible, and it's just incredibly difficult. But she decided to do it, and I think it was pretty tough, right? Like it was rough. But in having that conversation, I thought a lot about, you know, my interactions with Kathy over the years, and, you know, sometimes when you look back on things that happen, having had life experiences, you realize that they were actually more significant than maybe you thought at the time. And so I wanted to just touch on a couple of them. I clerked for the Superior Court, which is our trial court, and our judges were really good about, and Judge Del Pesco, you were there at the time, letting the clerks know if there was a particular lawyer who was going to be making an argument that you know you should see, watch how they do things. And I remember there was a buzz about this murder case that was pending, and I had not met Kathy before, but the buzz was, you know, Kathy Jennings was going to cross-examine this defendant, and Kathy was considered like the top trial lawyer, but I had not seen her in action, and it was a big case. It was a guy by the name of McDonald, right? And it was the second time it was tried, I think. And so anyway, I went with a bunch of the other clerks, and we watched this cross-examination of Glenn McDonald, I think his name was, and he was testifying on direct, and he was a pretty smart guy. I thought he was kind of smug, but he was smart, and he was sort of telling his story, and it was sort of resonating with the jury a little bit, and I remember thinking, this guy might actually get off here. This isn't looking good, and so Kathy gets up to cross-examine him, and she's got her notebook and her pencil, and she stands up there and starts a cross-examination. And I don't know if folks remember that scene in A Few Good Men with Tom Cruise, and Jack, he stands up and you can't handle the truth, and I did the code red. It didn't happen like that, but it actually never happens like that. But it was more like sort of a verbal equivalent in a boxing match when someone walks down their opponent and you sort of keep moving forward and take the angles away until the person's sort of trapped, and then verbally you just pound them. And that is what Kathy did. I mean, it was unbelievable. Methodically went through this and just absolutely tore this guy up. And I remember looking at the jury, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, you go, girl." They're just like, I mean, it was done, right? And so this morning I was thinking about it, and I was just trying to make sure I was sort of remembering it right. And I did a couple searches and found this post-conviction relief opinion. This is what defendants who get convicted do after they're in prison. They try and get their, conviction release. And his main argument was that his attorneys were ineffective because they allowed him to be devastated by Kathy on the cross-examination, and it was devastating. So that was about when I first saw Kathy in action, and soon thereafter I went to the Attorney General's office and actually worked directly for Mary, and Kathy was soon chief deputy. And for me, I didn't think that was such a big deal. I grew up with two older sisters who were smarter than me and bossed me around, and so I thought it was perfectly fine. I didn't think it was anything that extraordinary, but Kathy was a really, really good leader. She was super smart, was able to make decisions, move things along, and I remember being very, very impressed with that. But it was more recently, like when we were working on the campaign, and we were going through all these pictures of what you're going to put in your brochure and on the different things. And there was this picture of the AG's office, criminal division, back in the day, and it was shot in the lobby of the Carvel State Office building from the mezzanine, so everybody, all 75, however many there were, are all lined up. And there was two women in the whole division. Kathy, and I don't remember who the other person was. Lucy, right. And it just made me realize how difficult it was to ascend to be the chief deputy in that environment. And I worked with those guys, and we used to play sports and stuff, and it was like all testosterone all the time. I mean, those guys were, and the fact that that Kathy was able to. Kathy's like the G.I. Jane of the AG's office, really. If you think about it, it was really, it was great. So the last thing I will just mention as I sort of reflect on things was that when Kathy left the AG's office the first time, this is when Charlie Oberle ran for Senate. Kathy and Charlie went out on their own, Oberle and Jennings. I always thought it should have been Jennings and Oberle, but that's fine. We'll do that. But in having been in the private sector and understanding the challenges there, the notion that you'd go out when you're in a situation where you're the breadwinner, supporting a family, and start from a dead stop and set up your own private law firm when you have no idea whether the business, the revenue is going to come in. The only thing you know is the bills are coming in. It's just super impressive to me, the courage to take that risk. I find now, in retrospect, just incredibly impressive. I certainly wasn't willing to take that risk. I guess the point for me is just that I think it's great that we're recognizing Kathy as the head of the second most powerful office in our state, and I think that's awesome. But the thing I would say is Kathy Jennings is really the most qualified Attorney General we've ever had. So separate and apart from the fact that she's the second woman in office, she is the most qualified Attorney General we've ever had, which I think is even more awesome. So, thank you.
Mr. McGonagall's daughter is here today. She's one of the Ursuline students. He didn't know that. So that was a surprise. So finally, I know the Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall Long, Mr. Dawson. See, I'm announcing Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall Long now. There you go. We saved the best for last, right? So she's going to come up now and speak.
No music. Yeah. That's all right. That's all right. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I don't need the music.
That's all right. Thank you. Good afternoon. Kathy and I have had a chance, obviously, to know each other for several years in different capacities, but as the Lieutenant Governor and last year's honoree, I know that Kathleen would want me to do this. I want to give a shout out to the University Whist Club, to the sponsors, Sidney Thomas Jewelers, I'm displaying the jewelry, and to Audi and others. It really is about recognizing sponsors and community who can come together to recognize the power of women. Ladies, power of women, pat yourselves on the back today. And to the gentlemen who are in the room, we want to say thank you also for being here today. I know, as the previous speakers, what a moment when you have your child, those of us who are parents, who can speak as Becky did from her heart, and the commissioner who gave the runway of this magnificent woman, and to Tom McGonigal, who's been chief of staff and many positions in government with our former governor, to be able to talk about, I have a new nickname, G.I. Jane, to be able to talk about Kathleen Jennings, the right woman, the right person, at the right time for our state. And I am proud to say, serving on national bodies, that she is the best, I am convinced, and I'm at many forums, best Attorney General in our country. And I am so proud that on International Women's Day, as I look around this room, with our women from many diverse backgrounds, our higher education presidents, to young aspiring women, to women in leadership and business, that we are here to look at this year's theme, right? A balance for better. And if you hear through Becky and our commissioner, as well as through Thomas McGonigal, who better has balanced, and then the consummate air traffic controller, and who recognized long ago the equality issues, whether from economics, whether it be for our community, or those who are the least among us. And when she had to be hardened on crime, she could do that. But when she had to stand up for vulnerable, the domestic violence, our sex predators, our vulnerable seniors, and I'm going to give a shout out to a young woman that she has mentored in different capacities, a new representative who didn't get acknowledged, Representative Krista Griffith, who is here as well. Shout out to Representative Krista Griffith, that who's represented the vulnerable, our seniors, as the judge will tell you. And as I look at my leaders and my colleagues in the House and the Senate, and Senator McBride, please don't take this comment against me as I make it, because you are a wonderful male leader, and you do get things done. But I say this to Governor Carney often. I love Margaret Thatcher's comment. And so ladies, when you go back to school today, when you go back to Mount Pleasant, and some of the guys are giving you a rough time, you can say, well, you know, Margaret Thatcher said it best. If you want something talked about, you give it to a man. And if you want something done, you give it to a woman. So I didn't want my Senate leader to take offense at that, but But we know, and we are here about a woman who doesn't just talk about it, she gets it done. And she gets it done with grace, and she gets it done with dignity, and she gets it done with compassion, and she gets it done with caring. And each table here, I don't have time because we've run out of time. If I had time, I was going to want you to come up with one word that epitomizes our fantastic honoree for International Women's Day. And we'll have all different kinds of words. We would have Energizer, G.I. Jane, we'd have all types of words. But it is really about what this International Women's Day represents. There are women today who are treated as secondhand citizens. There are women today around our globe who do not have powers, do not have what we have in this great country and what we have here in the state of Delaware. And because of fine leaders and mothers who are able to do that juggling role, who are that air traffic controller like Kathleen Jennings, it's a team effort. And when I spoke to her the other night, she's kind of like me. We're like, you know what? We don't like people saying a whole lot because we're used to kind of being there, getting things done. But we're so appreciative, I am, to the University Whist Club, to Sidney Thomas Jewelers, to Audi, and all the sponsors who recognize the value, and to each of the women leaders in this room. I challenge you, as I know Kathy will tell you, we did not get here alone. We had fine mentors. Her mother, the nurse, who I'm biased for as a nurse, we recognize that we have to work together. And we want each woman here today, if you are in leadership, team up with these fine young women who are here today. Hand out your hand to them, mentor, work together. Because when we chatted, she was like, be quick, don't say much. You know, it's about being part of the team. And I am so proud, as I know is Governor Carney and all the cabinet secretaries, the leaders who are here in our state of Delaware, judges, judges' daughters. We are so proud of you. We are proud to be part of your team, the winning team, and this year's honoree to the International Women's Day. Let's give it up for our Attorney General, Kathleen Jennings.
Oh my, where do I start? I just have to say my heart is so incredibly full. And I'm a little emotional, starting with my daughter, Becky. You're an amazing woman, Becky. The sky is the limit for you. And Mary, my friend Mary, who's been by my side through thick and thin, Mary. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Tom's sort of the Yoda in my life. He is, he is always the voice of wisdom and is always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead. And you are one of the main reasons I am, frankly, here today. So thank you, Tom. And Bethany, I know she had to go, but you know, running for office is a pretty daunting task. I never did it before, and it's a statewide office, and so it's every day of the week and every night of the week and then some. And I would come home at night, and just before I went to bed, I'd get that text from Bethany that would just keep me going. So I'm very grateful to our Lieutenant Governor. And I'm so grateful to be here today, to be honored and to have all of you here with me, my friends. Thank you so much to the University and Whist Club and to our sponsors. Thank you, senators, representatives, for being here, councilwomen, women, and you know, there's a lot of us now. There's a lot of us now. The night of, yes, there is. Margaret Rose, you are my heart. Oh my gosh. Susan Del Pesco, you're in there too. She's an amazing pioneer as well. And Margaret Rose, we miss you so much. I know you don't miss it, but we miss you. And so, thank you, everyone who spoke and everyone who has taken the time out to be here today. It's really gratifying to see that people have come out for this event and to celebrate International Women's Day. let's consider how far we have come. We know we have far to go, but we really, in this country, have come so far. I wish that were true throughout our world, but in some countries it is not. And so I really stand here to honor women throughout the world who struggle each and every day just to get a basic education, a driver's license, to be able to fulfill their own dreams, to be able to live healthy lifestyles. Women across the world struggle each and every day to attain those very basic things that we take for granted. So we still have quite a bit of work to do until we achieve true equity. But we have climbed so far in the last couple of decades. Oh, by the way, I see John Hynansky over there. John, you are my friend, and thank you so much for being here today. And for what you've done for the University and Whist Club. Thank you. It is inspiring for me, both as a woman and as a member of our community, to see more and more women standing up. And I have to tell you, the night of the election at Democratic headquarters, the entire stage, there was a string of women elected. And it was one of the best feelings in the world as we held hands and joined each other to celebrate the fact that in the year 2019, there are women throughout our legislature who weren't there before. The diversity in our legislature makes us so gosh darn strong. And that statewide elected officials, think about it, they're all women, with the exception of the governor. And so Governor John Carney is incredibly gracious and decent. And he looks around and he sees, and I remember it that night at Democratic headquarters, he saw a sea of women just coming up the stage and saying, "Hello, Governor, here we are." You know, it's inspiring for me, both as a woman and as a member of our community, to see more women standing up for themselves when they face oppression, abuse, and indignity, standing up for one another through organizing, support, and advocacy, and standing up for our community by seeking out leadership opportunities from school boards to boardrooms to the White House. In 2016, the media loved to use the phrase "Year of the Woman," in large part because for the first time in the nation's history, a woman who 100 years earlier couldn't vote, let alone run, became a major party's nominee for president. No matter who you voted for, it was an incredible and long overdue milestone for our country. But I disagree that 2016 was the year of the woman. In 2017, women from Hollywood down to the workplace stood up to say, "Me too," and time up. In 2018, record numbers of women sought and won leadership opportunities in elected office and in the business community. At the end of 2018, Nevada became the first state in American history with a majority female legislature. Are we far behind? And at the beginning of 2019, Delaware's legislature won a generations-old fight with the passage of an Equal Rights Amendment. Thank you to everyone who worked on that. So we didn't slow down after 2016. We're just getting started. Some of our guests today were born inside of this millennium, and certainly the students today were. So I want to take a moment to recall how far we've come. When I first joined the Department of Justice, as others have said, I was one of 2 women in the criminal division of the Attorney General's office. Our Attorney General was a man, as were all of our statewide elected officials. and all but 17 members of Congress. Delaware had only recently appointed its first female judge. Like so many professional and physical spaces, the very room we are in was at one time reserved for men only. It was a man's world, almost without exception, a white man's world. Women, including me, had to work twice as hard as a man to go half as far. We endured ridicule, condescension, and low expectations. We were infantilized, ignored, and often abused. In my early years as a prosecutor, it was sometimes all I could do to be heard in a world that was made of, by, and for men. What kept me persevering year after year was what drew me to the law in the first place. The notion that justice is for all of us, that people may be imperfect, but that the law's only prejudice comes from those who wield it. In short, that justice for all means justice for women, and that justice for women means justice for all. And over time, everyone in this room, broke through barriers. I became the first female member of the Delaware Bar to be invited to join the American College of Trial Lawyers, and I am so grateful to have had that opportunity. In the Department of Justice, I and others gave voice to a broader perspective on how women were treated as coworkers, to how women were treated as survivors of sexual or domestic violence, and ultimately to women who turned to sex work and became the victims of that brutal serial killer. Make no mistake, women have a long way to go in America as well, in the world. We comprise more than 50% of the population, but even as a majority in this country, we hold 20 to 30% of elected offices and Fortune 100 board seats. Even as breadwinners in 60% of American households and primary breadwinners in 40% of American households, we struggle to enter many career fields. And when we arrive, we often have to perform to a higher standard. Every woman in this room has faced a double standard. Every woman in this room has experienced treatment in small ways or large that make her feel powerless. And every woman in this room has shown strength and resilience in the face of being treated that way. Things are changing, thank goodness. We can see that change in high-profile ways, like the Me Too movement and the emergence of more women leaders in Washington and in Dover. But we can also see it in the young women who have joined us from Ursuline Academy and my alma mater, Mount Pleasant High School. Young women who are learning from our own experience and who more than ever understand that they are entitled to opportunity, dignity, and to equity. These young women, impressive as they are now, will only become more educated, wiser, and more determined in their estimation of how our future ought to look. Now, as always, these women and their peers are the source of our future. We must empower them, honor them, respect them, and they must continue to empower themselves and those around them. Prejudice is a disease, whether it is aimed at your gender, your skin, your language, your faith, your disability, your income, or those who you choose to love. The answer to prejudice is to always lead with justice, with strength, and with kindness. I applaud young women who understand how important it is to be proud of themselves, to know that, quote, being bossy, end quote, is a good thing. That they deserve the same opportunity as anyone else, that strength is not only found in enduring hardship, but in righting wrongs, that nobody has the right to hurt you, to treat you like property, to minimize you, or to tell you what you are or what you can't be. It is true that the fight for equality is still uphill. We have all seen examples of setbacks and tough fights for women to attain things that men have taken for granted. What gives me hope is how many girls, including and especially young girls, are being taught that they can change what they don't like and that they can choose their own futures. And so let me close with this. I've spent my career fighting for victims, fighting for the accused when I was in private practice, fighting for our community, for women, and for a voice. I am not nearly finished, but if you take anything away from today's events, I hope it is that that fight still goes on with each and every one of you, and that you must carry it forward. I'm so grateful to be here. It's really the culmination of so many years, and I am only here because other women believed in me, starting with my mom and ending with my daughter. Thank you so much.